I am Dr. Eanah. I am a board-certified clinical psychologist, a fellowship-trained forensic psychologist, and a military veteran. I'm an overall expert on behavior, and I am here today with ATELIER.
All right, so you served your country and now you serve your community through mental health. How did your time in the military shape your understanding of emotional resilience?
Oh gosh. So I was in the military for about 13 years, and the emotional resilience, of course, that I saw from the service members that I worked with. So I worked with people from not just the Air Force, across all branches, Air Force, Army, Marines, Navy, and seeing people go on back-to-back deployments. So we have like your combat trauma, people going on one deployment, barely having any time coming back, and they just keep going. And what I noticed about people was that they held on to this idea of patriotism or service to their country. They always had to have this principle, an underlying principle that they held onto that would give them sort of the emotional resilience to keep on going. A lot of people think resilience is just something that happens, but you don't get resilient pretty much unless terrible things happen to you. That's how resilience grows. So being able to translate that from the military now to the community, it's just been such an amazing journey.
Awesome. So grief is often associated with death, but you speak powerfully about it as a response to change. How can reframing grief expand the way we approach healing?
I think that one of my biggest messages I want to give people when it comes to grief is that, first of all, grief doesn't only happen when you lose someone. You can grieve a change in life, a divorce, the loss of a relationship. When we think about grief in the traditional sense as it relates to death, there's this myth, this idea out there that pop psychology has sort of popularized about the stages of grief, and talking about, most people, even if they're not in the world of mental health, have heard of the stages of grief. So there's going to be some sort of anger, denial, rage, and eventually coming to some sort of acceptance. And I just want people to know that that is a complete, don't hold yourself to that standard. The psychologist who actually created the stages of grief, model, which is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, it had nothing to do with grieving a lost loved one. It had to do with people who were dying. So it was a model she created for people to accept that they were dying and the stages that people went through at the end of life. It's been misapplied, and even like on her deathbed, she was like, please stop misapplying my theory, So even though there are stages that you go through, grief is not linear. There is no destination. If you're thinking you're gonna reach some point where you wake up one day and it's all okay, you're gonna find yourself disappointed. So grieving should stay, I would say, in the ing. It's a process, we're constantly doing it, and having self-compassion. There's no wrong or right way to grieve.
The Council Club feels less like a clinic and more like a movement. What was your vision when creating it, and how does it meet people where they are?
I thank you for asking about Council Club. Council Club is my baby. We have poured so much time and energy into it. I came up with the idea really based off of my work as a forensic psychologist in the military. I was tasked on a regular basis with translating really complex psychological topics to federal agents who did not want to sit there and hear a lecture from me. They didn't want to hear all the theory or all the articles I read. What they wanted to hear was, how can I take what you know and apply it to this investigation, to my job, actionable steps. And they knew that because it was coming from me and my team, that it was going to be credible information, so they didn't have to go back and check. We could just say, hey, this is the research and here is exactly what you need to do. So for Council Club, I see the same hunger. People are looking for wellness information, and there's so much misinformation out there. Anybody with a cell phone or an opinion can say whatever they want, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good information. So with Council Club, I wanted to break down some of the complex topics and just put it into really simple, actionable steps that people can use in their life. My expertise is in human behavior. It's what I've studied through my clinical work, through being a forensic psychologist, a profiler, all of it. So when it comes down to behavior, why people do the things they do, whether it's in relationships, at your job, as a parent, just how you treat yourself, any of that, I wanted to take all the theory and psychology behind it and just break it down in a simple, relatable way, and also tap into the culture as well. We say Council Club is where we have wellness, culture, and everything in between.
Culturally competent therapy is at the heart of your work. What are the most common mental health blind spots in communities of color, and how do you help people unlearn them?
It's really interesting. So I would say, blind spots for anybody, I think, working with a diverse community, I think you can really go down a wrong path assuming that there are all these things in common just because you may look like someone or because you may come from the same background as someone. We know that there are more differences within a group than there are between a group. So thinking of us as a monolith or as sort of one-dimensional. So don't over-assume that just because I'm a woman and you're a woman, I'm a black woman and you're a black woman, that we're automatically gonna connect. I think some other blind spots also come with this idea, if we look at the other side of people actually taking the step to go to therapy, culturally, and this is not to overgeneralize, but culturally there are a lot of things that get embedded within our community. Things like, what happens in this house stays in this house, the privacy. My parents were huge on privacy, so talking to anyone about what's going on was sort of always taboo. So for me to even sit in front of a therapist and quote unquote tell all my business, felt strange at first. And I also do go to therapy, even though I'm a psychologist. There's also a religious component that can come in when you tie in religious upbringing with wanting to seek help. There's the idea that, your faith should be stronger, you should be able to pray things away. I think that when two people meet, and especially as a provider, if you're working in a community that has typically been marginalized, do not make any assumptions. You have to come in, you have to earn the trust. And what we also know is that regardless of what approach your therapist uses, in order to, whether they're a cognitive behavioral therapist or a Freudian therapist, whatever their theory is, the thing that matters the most is that relationship between the patient and the client.
So you said that vulnerability is a form of bravery.
Yes.
In your opinion, what makes transparency such a powerful tool for healing, especially in public spaces?
Got it. So vulnerability as a form of bravery, I think that we are all walking around this world going through things that are just ultimately human. We have different experiences, they may look different ways, but we are all human beings and having this common human experience. What can happen though is people can feel like they are operating alone, or that they are the only one that's going through what's happening. You look at social media and it seems like everyone's life is just perfect and they're projecting these images to the world. We get into comparison culture, you start to compare yourself to how you think other people are doing, or if we look at the research on social norms, it can cause you to either compare yourself in a negative way or feel like you're not doing enough. So when people are brave enough to be transparent, to say, yes, I am a board certified clinical psychologist, but I also go to therapy, or yes, you see where I am right now, but this is the path I took to get there. By being transparent, not only about our victories as well as our struggles, that is a form of bravery, and that's what will spread the message to the rest of the world that, hey, you're not alone, we're connected in this way. And I think over time, if more people are able to be honest about the struggles and not just the successes, or not just popping out at the end like, hey, I made it through that, but really being transparent about the steps you took to get there, that's a form of bravery that is, I would say, contagious and can encourage and help other people.
Awesome. So with emotional intelligence is often overlooked in leadership, how do you teach people to tap into their inner awareness to become more conscious leaders?
Great question. And it's so interesting that even now, emotional intelligence is still, it's kind of a buzzword now, but it's still not necessarily viewed as a necessary skill. So you have people who can apply for a corporate job, be a CEO, all of these things, and they will not be successful if they don't know how to deal with people, or if they are successful, their interpersonal relationships will suffer. So learning to be emotionally intelligent, being able to first, it starts with you. You cannot be emotionally intelligent and pick up on what's going on with someone else, the subtext, the layers, if you don't know what's going on with yourself. When I work with people, a lot of times people come to therapy or to coaching because they have a problem with someone else, right? They come in and it's like, well, my husband, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my kids, my boss, and it's really externalized. And before we can even take any steps to start figuring out how you can manage this relationship with this other person, we need to do an assessment. Where is your emotional intelligence? How tapped in are you? If you're not tuned in to what's going on with yourself, most likely your meter as to what's going on with other people is going to be flawed. So it's always starting from within, always.
Awesome. So with emotional intelligence is often overlooked in leadership. How do you teach people to tap into their inner awareness to become more conscious leaders?
Great question. And it's so interesting that even now, emotional intelligence is still, it's kind of a buzzword now, but it's still not necessarily viewed as a necessary skill. So,
and this is our final question. Let's end on a myth buster. What's one misconception about therapy that you wish more people, especially in Black and brown communities, would release today?
That's a really good question. So there are a lot of therapy myths out there that people think of what is going to happen if I go to therapy, right? If you ask the average person, what's going to happen when I go to therapy, they may assume that you are going to be the expert on them in their lives. I think if we talk generally, right? So people think that I'm coming to an expert, I'm going to tell you my problem, you are going to tell me how to fix it, and I'm going to be out of here, you know? It doesn't work that way. It's not like if you broke your leg and I put a cast on and you're good. It's more of a journey that we are on together. So as we're on this journey, I'm noticing things about you, you're noticing things about you, I'm learning you, you're teaching me who you are, and I'm then in return reflecting back to you the things that I see as your provider that can help you make your life better in whatever way you're looking to do so. Specifically for the Black and brown communities though, there's a mistrust. So there's a long history of cultural mistrust, just in general, when it comes to medical, political, social, educational, and it's justified. And psychology specifically has often fallen like on the wrong side of history. So I can't even say that people in Black and brown communities that are, you know, cautious or hesitant, you're not wrong, right? There has to be work done within our community to sort of build and show that trust. But I think the biggest concern that I hear is that you're going to be deemed as crazy, or you're going to lose your freedom, or you're going to be locked away somewhere if you even just start talking about your feelings or start talking about things that are taboo, like having thoughts of wanting to die and things like that. People don't want to say those things out loud because they think it's just an immediate lock them up and throw away the key, especially communities that have been like over institutionalized historically, but it's not the case. I tell people all the time, it takes a lot for me to recommend that somebody's, I can count on one hand the times I've recommended that somebody involuntarily, you know, and that's because I was really concerned. So I think normalizing a lot of these thoughts and feelings and being able to get them out and to build the trust that your freedom is not going to be taken away. Hi, I am Dr. Eanah. I am a board-certified clinical psychologist, a fellowship-trained forensic psychologist, and a military veteran. I'm an overall expert on behavior, and I am here today with ATELIER.